In today's photo deconstruction, I'm going to break down a fine art nude shoot that is inspired by Marilyn Monroe with a pinup twist. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and fine art nudes are one of the things that I love to shoot because there's no limits on your creativity. A lot of times as a fashion and beauty photographer, or when I do commercial work, there's always a boss, someone that's giving input or overseeing the creative process. But when I do fine art nude shoots, it's all about the creativity and collaboration with my model. And so the inspiration from this shoot came from the model, Bryona Ashley. She is a wonderful burlesque performer and a fantastic model. And so one of the things that's unique about Bryona is that she lives the essence of a vintage lifestyle. She always has this beautifully shaped hair, impeccable makeup, the way she dresses is vintage. And so I wanted to do a Marilyn Monroe inspired shoot with her. Bryona, however, is not blonde, so this was going to be our brunette Marilyn Monroe. Now the inspiration that I had looking through many Marilyn shoots was of the red velvet draping of fabric. I wanted to do something inspired by that incredible nude shoot. But of course I wasn't trying to exactly replicate it, I wanted to create it with a modern twist. So let's take a look behind the scenes of the making of this image. All right, so I'm going to break down the lighting, and this shot is done with just 3 strobes. Now our main light over here on the left hand side is one of my favorite go-to modifiers, which is the Westcott optical spot. As you may know, I co-designed this with Westcott, and one of the reasons I like it is not just because it has a lot of creative capabilities, which it does, but I love it because it creates really hard, crisp light. Now if you look at a lot of vintage photographs, very often the light was hard, and that's because they were using hot lights, specifically Fresnels. These light sources were creating very crisp shadows, very poppy, high contrast lighting, which with many of our tools today, we aren't getting that same look and feel. And so this was a great opportunity to introduce this modifier for one of its less creative benefits, but really practical uses, which is easy, hard light. And so I am using the optical spot on the left-hand side of the frame to illuminate my subject. It's basically meant to illuminate most of her body. So that is our main light. However, when I lit her with just one light, the background got really dark and it wasn't as clean and smooth and poppy as I wanted it to be, which is why I added a second light over here to the right-hand side, which is my fill light. What that does is it takes the hard light that's there and smooths it. It lightens shadows, it evens out texture, because hard light emphasizes texture. It's a little bit more aggressive of a light source. So when you take a hard light as a main and a soft light as a fill, it smooths out skin texture. It tends to be a little bit more flattering. And it takes something from being as textured and heavy and lightens it up, makes it a little bit smoother and poppier. So that's what the fill light is, and I'm using a medium umbrella with diffusion. This is a soft light source, but you could have used a 3-foot octave box, a 3 by 4 foot soft box, basically any soft light source as flat onto the frame as possible. If it's moved over too far to the left and right, the light starts to have directionality to it. So in other words, instead of lifting up the shadows of the entire photograph, one part of the photo will be lighter or darker from the fill if it's not centered. So we have my main light, my fill light, and then we have my background light, which is right here, and it is a 20-degree grid. Now grids create tight pockets of light. And so what I wanted was a little separation between her and the background. Basically wanted a highlight on the background for a little bit of a glow. That was the concept. And so I have those 3 lights put together, but of course we're forgetting one of the most important parts of the entire shot, which is the set. The set I have here is simple and it's purchased from Amazon. So all of these are just red velvet curtains. They're about 120 inches in length, and I'm hanging them from C-stands so that I can get that beautiful drape. And then I have a couple extra curtains that I have draped over a really inexpensive, like $250 chaise that I bought on Amazon, so that I was able to surround the subject in this beautiful red luxury. Now before we take a look at the behind the scenes and the building of the set, let's actually take a look at the settings. I was shooting with the Canon R5 and I was shooting with the 24 to 72.8 lens. This lens is great because it is razor sharp. I mean, the files and the detail that it captures, I mean, it is crazy sharp. But it also gives me a little flexibility if I want a wider shot or I want to pop into a mid-length shot. For the settings, I was shooting at f5.6, ISO 400. I chose 5.6 in order just to cast the background a little bit softer, a little bit more of a narrower depth of field. And furthermore, when I work with an optical spot, I try to shoot a little wider aperture or a little higher ISO so I don't have to shoot full power on my strobe. Because an optical spot concentrates light, if you're shooting 10 out of 10 power on your strobe, it's likely to overheat. So bumping up my ISO and opening up my aperture helps reduce the power I need to shoot the strobe at. So let's take a look at the shot that I captured in camera and then some of the tweaks I made to get that shot looking perfect. All right, so this is what I captured in camera. There are 0 adjustments done to this. This is straight out of camera. And look at how beautiful the light is on the subject and how gorgeous her skin looks. Now, first of all, she has beautiful skin, but it's that beautiful hard light, soft fill, hard main, soft fill combo that creates this result, which I love. Now, just a couple of things, by the way, if you want to learn more about using hard light, I have a hard light recipe guide at learnwithlindsay.com, as well as a guide to using an optical spot. So if you like this sort of look, you can search out and seek those lighting recipe guides for a little bit more of a resource. Also wanted to mention that these images were taken at my Fine Art Nude workshop. I run these every year and they're quick to sell out, so you'll definitely want to check them out. But the image I'm showing you here is one of the more censored, implied nude shots. But I have several that are a little bit more pinup where you actually see nudity, because in these workshops I believe in celebrating the human form. But of course, for social media purposes, we have to go with the implied nude ones. I actually think it works quite well here because it is definitely a pose that is reminiscent of pinup, which fits the style. All right, so this is what's in camera, which I like. A couple of things, I think that the velvet on the chase is a little bright. I think it's probably a little distracting. I don't love the shadow cast by the optical spot in the background. I could have changed the angle a little bit, but it was really hard to eliminate it. I also have that grid on the background, but it didn't translate quite as bright. So you can see over here, the shadow becomes lighter behind her lower back. That's what the optical spot is doing. But I wanted it to be even more exaggerated. I also think that the curtains, that they needed a little cleanup. They're a little bit wrinkly, not as pristine as I'd like them to be. So those are things I'm going to do with my retouching in Photoshop. But I wanted to show you a little bit what I did with color grading. What I did is I went to the reds and I darkened them down. You can target individual colors and lighten or darken them. So I darkened them down so that her pale skin would pop out a little bit more, and then I desaturated the shot overall. So you can see that her skin goes paler and the reds aren't quite as saturated. All right, and so then let's look at the retouch. So you can see the biggest changes in the background. What I ended up doing is grabbing a plate from a different shot where the curtains were a little cleaner, a little brighter, and blending that in because I thought that it was just making it look a little bit messy. Then you can see the glow behind the subject where I enhanced what I wanted to be created by the grid. I enhanced it even more. Then you can see maybe a tiny bit of retouching on the skin. I thought that the second arm that you could see lined up here was a little distracting, so we retouched that out. And now everything is just clean and perfectly controlled. So here's what we started with, and here's what we ended with. So it's a lot more polished, and I think this looks kind of like a pinup card. Now, if you look at those Marilyn Monroe images as inspiration, a lot of them were a lot warmer and the subject was reclined. And so I wasn't trying to recreate those, but instead trying to be inspired by those. Now, if you'd like to see the gear used in the making of these images, be sure to check out the links in the description below. And of course, visit adorama.com because that is my resource for all of my gear. But if you would like to come to a workshop and actually shoot these beautiful concepts, my Fine Art Nude workshops, every year I come up with different concepts and I'm shooting different beautiful talent, and I take you through lighting and posing and so much more. So you'll definitely want to check that out at learnwithlindsay.com. All right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this photo deconstruction. Be sure to like and subscribe for more. See you next time, guys.